Why? Hello and welcome everybody. Also good morning. So those of you guys who saw the campaign run on our tactician, I wanted to kind of show you guys the end game version of how the build plays. So I do respect a Witchhunter, as tactician is kind of a blaster in the campaign with one of the nodes they get. I forgot what it's called. It's the one that like basically arrow rains the whole screen. With that being said, this character is in SSF. I'm going to give you guys a quick blade. I do AFK for like a little bit. I'm going to hover over my gear because it is frankly not exactly very good. And I just want to show you guys what the character is kind of capable of. I will put a big disclaimer and say that my character is super squishy right now, as I do need to do a respec. I think I'm dropping Calling Strike for maybe Obsessive Rituals to get Sorcery Ward. But to do that, I first need to get a decent baseline of gear. My current gear does not really cut it. With that being said, I'm going to go jump in. I haven't spent these Atlas points yet. We've been kind of just flying through. I hope this map layout is actually not shit, because this build excels in essentially maps with kind of like a lot of walls. It doesn't have to have a lot of walls, but anywhere where there's a wall like this is where the build will kind of work. So currently, there's a lot of tech that goes on here, so I'm just going to get started with the beginning. So to make this build really smooth and to have limited button presses, what you want to go ahead and do is the following. So right now you can see that my character has nothing here. You want to take your main skill. So we have two. We have Permafrost and Fragmentation rounds. So you're going to take your Permafrost, if you like this, on left click and put this on weapon 1. Then you're going to take your frag rounds and you're going to put them on weapon 2. Then take your crossbow and right click it so that it's applying to both sets. After you've done this, simply load your Permafrost rounds. So you left click them to load them. Then select crossbow shot. Then take your frag rounds, load it, and select the second crossbow shot. Now you don't need a reload button, and you can simply swap between left and right click. Okay, now the next thing, because I got lucky, I found a Rakita's Flow. This makes clear a lot better. I'm gonna remove this for the showcase because it's worth like my entire build times 500, and I'm just gonna use Elemental Armament instead. With that being said, I'm going to run down my links and what I'm using. So fragmentation rounds with elemental armament. Now, a lot of people will ask, why would you use this? This does pure physical damage, and that's because we're scaling the versus frozen explode here for the 1500%. So elemental armament, conk effect, deliberation, rage forge 2. You can't use this until you run eternal rage, and cold attunement. Permafrost has ice bite 3, 2, elemental armament 2, cold attunement, projectile acceleration. This right here and this ricochet really bring the build together. Shout out to Arrow. I went on a stream and asked for some advice. He showed me that like basically projectile acceleration and ricochet go really hard. Freezing mark with prolonged duration, eternal mark, charge mark, and mark of siphoning. Oil grenade is really just for exposure. It's not a big deal. We only use it on bosses. So prolonged duration and potent exposure. Shard, scavenger, and and berserk actually are only used on weapon swap 2. You might ask, isn't that weird because it's a spirit gem? I will show throughout the showcase that this works. I don't believe it's a bug at all. It's completely intended. The TLDR is we only consume freezes for shard scavenger in our second weapon, and we only basically berserk will only apply in the second weapon, which is good because we never really degen. The degen would only be for that duration of time, right? We just right click and then left click, so the duration doesn't really matter, so we never really degen. Eternal rage just has clarity, you don't even need this. And then Herald of Ice has magnified area, cold attunement, elemental armament, and long shot. To fit this in, I do have one piece of gear with 40 spirit on it, so that's kind of how we're setting things up. And again, the character's really squishy. We're in SSF with minimal gearing, you can see right here. All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the showcase. Now, if you want extra damage when mapping, what you can do is you can actually use your mark first, and after you use your mark, you can just start clearing. The bread and butter is you're basically going to permafrost for most of your clear. If targets do not die from the permafrost, you can always right-click and detonate with your frag rounds. Your frag rounds will trigger Shard Scavenger, and the reason that is important is Shard Scavenger kind of brings the character together, and I'm going to show that here in a second. So you see right here, when I detonate that, we get this buff here where crossbow attacks do not consume bolts. That means you can just quite literally shoot. It's important to note that crossbows only pay their reload, they only pay their mana cost in the form of their reload up front. which means if you're shooting unlimited, you don't spend any mana on anything at all. Now, as I was talking about before, Rakita's Flow, very, very good for everything. It makes it so your mapping is a lot cleaner on a one-button build. It makes it so you're getting the explode chain on the first shot. Here's an example of a boss fight, and I'm going to run down the mechanics. So, step 1, we're just going to Oil Grenade. Step 2, we're going to Freezing Mark. These two are very, very important. Okay, now we're going to go for a Freeze build-up. So there's a Freeze. You'll notice on the Freeze build-up, we trigger Ice Bite, which is additional cold, and we trigger the Freezing Mark. Up here is your concentration. The lower this is to 0, the more damage you're going to do in general. So I try to get a few hits off. Then now I'm going to right-click with the Fragment. Okay, I actually fucked that up because I was trying to do the showcase, so let's try to rebuild it up again. That was my bad. So there's the Freeze. There's the Frag rounds. You can see the damage on the frag rounds on the pop. I messed that up. Usually what you do is you get a double pop. The reason you can freeze so easily is when you get that first freeze buildup, you're basically triggering 3 things. Number 1, you're triggering the 30% damage gained as cold on Freezing Mark. Number 2, you're triggering the bonus damage on Ice Bite. Neither of these apply on the first, like before you get the first freeze. And number 3, you trigger Shard Scavenger, so you're basically getting 60% more damage, and then you have unlimited shooting potential. Then, when you consume the charged mark, or sorry, the mark itself, it drops Shock Ground for 20% more damage. Furthermore, on the actual mark itself, we run what's called Eternal Mark, so it doesn't get consumed on the first application. The reason that's important is Freezing Mark makes it so that when targets are at 70% freeze, they're primed, and then you will just trigger the freeze. So we can almost guarantee 2 quick freezes. It's also important to note that for actual bosses, we will use, instead of Ricochet, you can actually use the freeze support. The freeze support will give actually 50% more freeze buildup, which is really nice. There's an example of a Abyss over here. Let me disable the Gloom Shrine, that's cheating. Oh, I didn't even see the mobs there, holy. Now I'm just gonna put in the Rakiatas, whatever people call it. This character right now is running no attack speed on their weapon. Even with no attack speed, it still feels pretty good, I would say. This build also does really well whenever things are grouped up for 2 reasons. Number 1, you have Explode. Number 2, the detonation on the frag rounds on the freezing enemies is an AoE, which means if there's multiple targets who are frozen, you are getting multiple AoE overlaps on the giant, like the big damage Explode essentially. Also, for people who want to know, the character runs kind of slow. That's because I have just 20 MS on my boots with no movement speed rune. There's a lot of movement speed you can pick up in general to make the character go faster. I stress this again because characters in SSF, we have very limited gearing right now.
Stop him.
Okay, well, unfortunately, 27% chaos res doesn't quite cut it on Abyss maps, but it is what it is, right? That is just how it goes. Tell me how OP this mob is, though. Like, holy, that chaos barrage is ridiculous. One of the things actually that happens when your character dies with this setup is whenever you die with one of your ammunition selected, it actually will do this and remove it. To fix that, simply select it again, load it, and then shoot. It's very, very weird. Just, you know, hashtag early access things. Yeah, that should have killed her. Alright, we're just gonna go run down here, then I'm gonna go flash the passive tree for you guys. This character is on Mobilytics. I'll pin it down below in the comments. The Mobilytics has snapshots of basically like the entire character progression. Starting from Act 1, I started making snapshots all the way through. I will let you know that there will be a lot of respecking involved, although it's nothing too crazy, as again, I could respec all in SSF, not a problem. You could simply look at the later trees to see kind of like where I path to, as there was a lot of discovery with this character, right? Part of the fun for me in PoE 2 is really discovering where the builds are kind of going. So this is currently where our tree is. We do use a lot of weapon swapping in it. A lot of the weapon swapping, for example, would be on attack speed for Permafrost, damage and skill effect duration on the frag rounds, the skill effect duration because it snapshots for the freezing mark. We've got accuracy, for example, on our Permafrost over here as it needs it, since it's more ranged. Damage on the fragmentation rounds. I've got some pen over here on the frag rounds because I don't run the Rakaitas on that. Still figuring things out, but I'm pretty happy with their character as, like I said, to make the character tanky, I think I'm going to just drop Culling Strike as I don't really feel it does anything for me. Pretty much drop all the Culling Strike nodes that I have. And then I think I'm going to try maybe pivoting into evasion. I was really trying to go like armor evasion, but it seems that I'm more in the evasion side of the tree. So I think we're just going to try full evasion and then go Sork Ward. Unfortunately, the Sork Ward wouldn't help with the example of what just happened with the chaos, but like realistically, I just got to cap my chaos res and that just kind of takes time. Last thing to talk about would be crossbow bases. I like using a crossbow with the loads and additional bolt. It makes things feel really, really good. If you cannot get that, you really, really need to take reusable ammunition and efficient loading, because this makes it so you have a 30% chance to not shoot, or sorry, not expend the ammunition if you've reloaded recently. We reload all the time, and then this makes it so your reload is instant. These basically feel the exact same. You just pay mana up front for this, whereas this you don't. But you don't have MP issues really with the build, right? If I just sit here and shoot, I mean, you will see the mana. It doesn't really go down very fast. All right, that pretty much covers it. You can find the build over on the Mobilytics. Like I said here, we've got snapshot breakdowns of the character. So this right here, level 90, is quite literally where you see my current character. This should be like exactly the character we have. Let me see, does it show everything? It does, yeah. This is exactly the character. Anyway, that's pretty much about it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the live stream at twitch.tv/Pohx. Take care, and thanks for watching.